Well, good morning. I'd like to call the Subcommittee on Digital Commerce and Consumer Protection to order, and I will now recognize myself for 5 minutes for an opening statement. Good morning. I'd like to welcome our witnesses this morning for today's hearing on emerging tech's impact on retail operations and logistics. Thank you for being here to help us examine how e-commerce has changed the face of retail and how both e-commerce and retail operations are responding in a world where technology, innovation, and consumer expectations are constantly evolving. Today, U.S. consumers demand the speed and convenience of getting what they want, when and where they want it, including ordering from their phones and picking up in store, varied payment options, and different delivery choices, including free shipping. This was evident during the 2017 holiday season as 51% of last-minute shoppers said they plan to purchase their gifts online. E-commerce and catalog sales increased 12.3% during the holiday, accounting for 16% of all goods sold. In 2017, 80% of shoppers made more than 4 to 7 online purchases in the typical 3-month time frame. As online shopping continues to gain in popularity and acceptance as in-store shopping, we want to understand how a consumer's decisions impact not only the e-commerce and retail companies, but also supply chain and delivery channels, particularly residential last mile. This past holiday season, it struck me how massive the challenge of getting millions of packages processed and shipped to shoppers once they clicked Buy Now. How are purchases able to be delivered to my home in Ohio or to family members or friends across the country in 2 days' time or less, often without adding additional charges? If I was in a hurry, I might be able to take advantage of same-day delivery with the help of the new last-mile and independent contractor options like Instacart or Cargo-Matic. When parcel deliveries encounter bad weather and delays or are misrouted and misplaced, how does that impact that? What impact does that have on e-commerce shippers and ordinary shoppers like me? Have the current tracking tools help give consumers more information about their orders? Then there's the whole question of returns. What happens to a purchase item when it is returned? When it enters the reverse supply chain for restocking, is it sold on a secondary market, donated to charity, or discarded? I'm sure this varies among companies, but I'm interested in hearing from our witnesses about their return processes. This hearing is part of this subcommittee's ongoing effort to explore how the internet and advanced technology impacts our lives, jobs, and economy. Ohio is already home to some of the most highly regarded e-commerce fulfillment and shipping facilities in the country. Many retailers and e-commerce companies have made the investment in fulfillment and shipping operations in my home state because of our outstanding workforce, Ohio's transportation network, and the proximity to major population centers. Just for instance, where I live, about 12 miles north of me, where I-75 and the Ohio Turnpike come together, it's within 1 day's drive of 60% of the United States population. Emerging innovations such as premium delivery, parcel locker boxes, and drones will surely challenge the future of the supply chain to provide higher performance to satisfy customers. The internet and data have had a transformative effect on every industry in this committee's jurisdiction for the better and also in presenting new challenges. One of those challenges is consumer data security in the e-commerce landscape. As the subcommittee has learned through numerous hearings on the subject, in exchange for efficiency and convenience, consumers provide companies with personal details like their addresses, payment card information to complete that order. The reality is that process is not going to change. I still need to tell the retailer where to deliver my new book after I pay for it. But continuing to improve security at all points of the supply chain is a critical goal that companies large and small need to be focused on. There are many interesting elements to this conversation about how new technology is changing how consumers shop and the package delivery system. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today about their experience with this transformation. And with that, I will yield back the balance of my time. And at this time, we'll informally pass on the ranking member of the subcommittee and go to the ranking member of the full committee, the gentleman from New Jersey, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's no question that the internet has changed the way we live nearly every aspect of our lives. It certainly has changed the way we shop at any hour of the day by phone, tablet, or a smart speaker on our kitchen counter. we have access to a dizzying array of products that appear almost magically at our doorstep overnight. The evolution of e-commerce presents exciting opportunities for business, and I look forward to learning more about the new technologies that are making them possible. The consumer benefits of e-commerce are obvious: ease of shopping, unlimited selection, and the convenience of fast home delivery or easy in-store pickup. Consumers of every demographic appreciate the advantages of online shopping. Yet, as with all online activities, the constant amassing of personal information that makes benefits of online shopping possible presents privacy and data security concerns. We also know that the sophisticated algorithms analyzing all that data can have structural flaws that create racial and other biases in how products are marketed, priced, and delivered. Additionally, the growth of e-commerce has increased freight traffic in our residential neighborhoods and led to more packaging waste than necessary. And I'm particularly concerned that the trend toward e-commerce is increasingly resulting in consumers purchasing counterfeit goods. Just last month, the Government Accountability Office released a report finding that of 47 products it purchased from third-party sellers hosted by major e-commerce websites, 20 of those 47 were counterfeit. While we all want more choice, consumers do not want fake products, especially counterfeits that are dangerous, such as cosmetics laced with lead or mercury. And today I wrote to 5 e-commerce websites GAO investigated, asking them to explain how they are addressing the problem of sales of counterfeit products through their platforms. And I hope our discussions at this hearing will include a review of the consumer protection challenges that I have mentioned. The commerce landscape is changing for sellers as well. Online sellers are reaching a larger and more diverse customer base around the world. Low startup costs allow even more people to benefit from online selling. Moreover, sellers are able to reach customers at all hours and employ workers who need a flexible work arrangement. At the same time, I am troubled by 2 big hurdles small businesses face in the growing world of e-commerce. The first is an outdated and decaying infrastructure. Our energy grid is precarious and inefficient. Something as basic as clean water supply is not a given, and many areas of our country still lack reliable broadband access. And the second is the FCC's dismantling of free and fair access to the internet, or net neutrality. And this action by the Trump FCC will significantly handicap any business without major economic clout. Committee Democrats in May took on the infrastructure crisis by proposing $40 billion for secure and resilient broadband. This is part of our Lift America Act. And we must stay focused on making reliable broadband access a reality everywhere. It's essential to small retailers in both rural and urban communities. And of course, net neutrality is essential for small retailers. Without free and open access to the internet, the entrepreneurs that drive our economy will struggle to survive, let alone thrive. And last year, I toured 4 businesses in Asbury Park, which is a city in my congressional district, and I witnessed firsthand just how integral the internet is to engaging new customers and generating sales. So we should also be mindful of how the decline of physical stores, the rise of large fulfillment warehouses, and the incorporation of robotics and automation into the supply chain will affect the job market. And I'm not suggesting we resist innovation, but that we continue to assess how to ensure our workforce is able to adjust to this shifting marketplace. So again, I thank all of you. It's going to be interesting to see what you have to say, and I yield that.
Thank you very much. The gentleman yields back, and the chair now recognizes the gentleman from Oregon, the chairman of the full committee, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for doing this very important hearing on the future, again, of emerging tech impact on retail operations and logistics. My district's home to a number of data centers: Google, Facebook, Apple, Amazon. Pretty impressive, the build-out that's going on there, the jobs that come with it, and how our economy is changing dramatically and rapidly. So this is really another part of our hearing sequence of looking at the future and innovation and legacy rules and regulations that actually can constrain and hold back innovation. The Internet's incredible ability to transform old ways of doing business is by now widely known, and in the retail space, e-commerce has closed this gap between buyer and seller to the point where, you know, I can use this phone sitting right here and order whatever I need and have it delivered by tomorrow. or perhaps sooner than that, I don't know. Well, I guess Uber Eats or something I can get. Hey, what am I getting for lunch? I should figure this out. Long and the short of it is the customer's in charge, and that's the way markets really work. And we want to make sure that this marketplace continues to grow and that we don't stand in the way with federal policy and things that inhibit. I would just say on the issue of net neutrality, it was really hard for these little startup companies to ever get off the ground prior to Tom Wheeler's decision on net neutrality. That's why these little startups we know today, like Amazon, Google, Facebook, et cetera, by the way, all blossomed prior to these rules. And I think you're seeing a complete overplay on the opposition to net neutrality. I don't think it's well understood. But anyway, going forward, we see this enormous change going on in shipping. We see the change in the workforce needs. And we want to make sure that the market works, that there's space for innovation and competition. And we're more than happy to legislate in the space to prevent bad behavior on the internet, such as throttling and blocking and some of those things that I think we could find common ground on, we could enshrine in statute, and give certainty to the market, as opposed to ping-ponging back and forth between courts and FCCs. And we would welcome a bipartisan effort to do that. At the same time that shoppers are benefiting from lower costs and greater choices, this revolution in logistics allow Americans to find a product online, purchase it, have it delivered to their homes in a few days or hours. Companies are experimenting with drones. I was down at Google X and with Sergey Brin as he was running one of their drones on the rooftop, showing how you can do package delivery and the speed with which they can bring you whatever you need. And so we need to look at what federal issues are in the way of allowing that to move forward. And then you have changes in manufacturing with the 3D printing holding potential to allow on-demand creation of products from quote-unquote local manufacturers. And so the internet revolution continues, and the public policy has to evolve with it. And our goal here is put the customer first. And so, Mr. Chairman, thanks for your good work and bipartisan way as we move forward in this endeavor. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you very much. The gentleman yields back, and the chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Illinois, the ranking member of the subcommittee, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And thank you to all our witnesses today. The internet has literally revolutionized how Americans shop. Consumers and businesses are less bound by geography. E-commerce opens up the door to new opportunities and greater competition. E-commerce doubled from 2011 to 2016. In fact, it's growing 5 times faster than traditional retail. These numbers come as no surprise, given the number of delivery trucks we see on our streets and the packages piled up on the doorsteps and in mailrooms across the country. As with other technological changes this subcommittee examines, e-commerce comes with other new challenges. Businesses must attract consumers to their websites, provide a convenient and secure shopping experience, and then literally deliver the goods. The U.S. Postal Service and private delivery service must transport a growing number of packages. Our infrastructure, physical and digital, must handle orders as they come in and ship out. States and cities must deal with changes to their revenue, not to mention collection of trash and recycling, and workers must adapt as jobs move from retail stores to customer service, tech support, and supply chain. The shift of consumers to the internet is especially difficult for small businesses. They have fewer resources to build a strong online presence. While a big player like Amazon can offer free shipping and get consumers to sign up for annual memberships, small businesses generally don't move enough product for that kind of business model. The unique challenges of building a successful business online only add to long-standing struggles such as access to capital and attracting quality workers. As we improve the resources that the federal government makes available to small business owners, we must factor in the growth of online retail. We also need to consider e-commerce as we advance infrastructure legislation. The internet can connect a business in rural Vermont, for instance, to a consumer in suburban Chicago, and both need access to reliable broadband. If we invest in broadband, we can expand business opportunities in both our large cities and smallest rural communities. But if broadband only reaches the area where it is most profitable, millions of entrepreneurs, workers, and consumers will be left behind. In addition, expanding opportunity through e-commerce requires a fair playing field. Net neutrality is fundamental to the innovation we have seen on the internet. The FCC's vote in December to undo net neutrality protection puts that innovation at risk. Without net neutrality, a broadband provider can charge a business extra to make its website load faster. The big names in e-commerce can afford to pay off broadband providers, but for a small business trying to sell nationwide, paying new fees to every broadband provider to load its website as fast as big corporate competitors may be prohibitively expensive. Consumers deserve better. That's why I have co-sponsored Congressman Mike Doyle's legislation to restore net neutrality and protect fair online marketplace. Before I finish, I'd like to take a moment to introduce David Boris. Mr. Boris founded Hell's Kitchen in Northbrook, Illinois. In addition to running a successful business, Mr. Boris serves as an executive committee on the executive committee of Main Street Alliance, a national network of small businesses committed to being inclusive, sustainable, and trusted members of our community. I look forward to hearing from Mr. Boris and the rest of our witnesses as we explore the challenges and opportunities presented by e-commerce. And I thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you very much. The gentlelady yields back. And this now concludes the member opening statements. The chair reminds members that pursuant to the committee rules, all members' opening statements will be made part of the record. Again, we want to thank our witnesses for being with us today and offering testimony before the subcommittee. Today's witnesses will have the opportunity to give 5-minute opening statements, followed by a round of questions from our members. Our witness panel for today's hearing include Mr. Rob Taylor, CEO of Convey, Mr. Dan Sanker, founder, president, and CEO of CaseStack, Inc., Mr. David Boris, founder of Hell's Kitchen and executive committee member of Main Street Alliance, and Mr. Jonathan Johnson, member of the board of directors at Overstock.com and president of Medici Ventures. And again, we want to thank you all for being with us today, and we'll start with Mr. Taylor. You're recognized for 5 minutes for your statement. Thank you very much.
Chairman Latta, Ranking Member Schakowsky, and members of the subcommittee. It is a privilege and honor to provide testimony on this important subject. My name is Rob Taylor, and I am co-founder and CEO of Convey, a software company headquartered in Austin, Texas. We partner with many of the nation's largest retailers to help them gain supply chain visibility for customer deliveries, prevent those deliveries from failing, and ultimately provide improved customer experiences. We sit squarely at the intersection of technology, retail last-mile supply chain, and consumer experience. Over the past 20 years, I have helped build several successful companies focused on providing enhanced, transparent retail consumer experiences. At Convey, we are helping our retail customers differentiate on the emerging competitive frontier, providing predictive, proactive e-commerce delivery experiences to consumers. A confluence of factors is creating opportunities for innovation and differentiation in the last-mile retail supply chain. E-commerce growth continues to explode, projected to represent 1 in every 8 retail dollars spent in 2020. The Amazon effect continues to raise the bar in all aspects of consumer experience, including redefining consumer expectations for fast, free delivery. The online sales growth of big and bulky items, such as furniture and appliances, require more complex last-mile carrier networks and expansion into other delivery modes, such as residential freight, where capacity and connectivity is limited, appointments must be set, and drivers need to enter consumers' homes. Collectively, These trends create not only transport challenges, but also significant data and visibility challenges for retailers to effectively serve their customers. Carrier networks for retailers are expanding. Several of our customers work with 100 or more carriers just for last mile deliveries. Each of these carriers produce unique tracking data that requires integration with disparate retailer systems. There is no industry standard for the production and use of this information. So why does enhanced visibility matter? We know 4 to 10% of all last mile shipments are at risk of leading to a negative consumer experience. Yet 70% of these exception cases have the potential to get back on track through proactive carrier collaboration or customer communication. Delivery failures inevitably reflect poorly on the retailer, not the carrier, given the retailer's brand relationship with the consumer. Survey data confirms that retailers who are unable to uphold their delivery promise risk losing customers, with 70% of consumers indicating they would abandon a retailer after one failed delivery. Convey was conceived to help retailers solve these challenges. We believe the last mile represents the most important opportunity for retail innovation. Our application ingests millions of data streams from carrier and retail system and transforms this data using machine intelligence to highlight distressed shipments early enough for all parties to collaborate, remediate, and head off a potential negative consumer experience. From this, our retail customers see reductions in call center activity, faster delivery times, reduced transportation costs, and increased customer satisfaction. Emerging technologies like ours that increase efficiency, speed, and transparency for shippers, consumers, and carriers ensure that the future of the retail experience looks bright. Intelligent, self-healing, and adaptive delivery networks are not far away. These transportation innovations will lead the way for other supply chains beyond retail, including healthcare, parts distribution, and more. While the consumer clearly benefits from these innovations, care must be taken for consumer safety and privacy, particularly as more data is produced through the Internet of Things, and consumers require more in-home deliveries, whether or not they are present in the home. There is also more sharing of data across an increasing number of last-mile ecosystem participants, requiring diligent and shared accountability. In summary, local carrier capacity and connectivity, data security, and consumer safety and privacy are all relevant issues the subcommittee may wish to consider related to the retail last-mile supply chain. I want to thank the members for the opportunity to share some perspective with you today.
Well, thank you very much for your testimony this morning. And Mr. Sanker, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Latta, Ranking Member Schakowsky, and members of the subcommittee for this opportunity to testify before you today. My name is Dan Sanker. I'm the founder and president, CEO of CaseStack. In simple terms, what we do is we bring clients' products into warehouses on the West Coast, in LA and Seattle, in the middle, in Dallas, Chicago, Toronto, and on the East Coast, in Atlanta and Scranton. And then what we do is we collaborate with retailers like an Amazon, Walmart, Whole Foods, Kroger, Target, and a lot of others. And mostly what we do is create multi-supplier orders. So they're destined for retailers and consumers. And what that does is it, on average, converts what would have been about 16 loads going someplace to one efficient truckload. The result for supply chains is less time in transit, less damages, less wasted miles and empty space on trucks, and less environmental impact, and ultimately lower prices for consumers. We're currently developing a new division of CaseStack called SupplyPike. The expectation there is that we'll spin that off, and it'll be a leading cloud-based platform for supply chain management professionals in consumer packaged goods. The CaseStack cloud-based technology platform already enables consumer packaged goods companies to manage everything from merchant interaction, account management, improvements in sourcing and forecasting, item setups, sell-through optimization, logistics, and business analytics. The SupplyPike technology platform is going to open that up to more, probably more than 500,000, we think, people that are in supply chain management in our industry. One of the other things, our company considers blockchain to be important for supply chain. It's probably one of the areas it's most applicable to. We're incorporating that into the applications. We are already taking Bitcoin as a payment mechanism just recently. Other big issues for me, sustainability. I moved out to Arkansas when Walmart was very focused on a groundbreaking sustainability initiative. I started a 501c3 to try to help drive that. Now what I see, though, is a very big reversal in some of the progress that we had made because of all the packaging kind of coming back. The packaging sort of coming back with a vengeance to accommodate the needs for logistics of e-commerce and long-tail distribution. We've got boxes that are stuffed with paper and plastic dunnage. They're driven to people's houses, thousands of trucks. Many of those are carrying items that might be as small as a box of pencils, but they're getting the gas mileage of something like an 18-wheeler, so it's obviously not the same. Recently, I posted an article on LinkedIn. It was really well received. It got tens of thousands of people interested and a lot of comments about how I ordered a box of cereal online. I spent about $3. It was $3.64, free shipping. It's a pretty good deal for a box of cereal, but there's really nothing free about it. There's nothing free about free shipping. There's not anything really normal or remotely sustainable about the fact that it took 2 pounds of cardboard and paper, 6 feet of tape, about a gallon of diesel fuel, and a lot of labor to get that box of Reese's Puffs to my house so that we could eat a cereal. It feeds into the capacity issue. If you were to book a truckload from here to somewhere today, you'd pay about 31% more than you would have a year ago. You'd be out vying for that truckload with 5.5 other people looking for a truckload. About a year ago, you probably would have been vying for that same truckload with 1 or 2 other people. So obviously, prices are going to continue to go up. Warehousing is also strained because e-commerce uses about 6 times as much warehousing as bricks and mortar retail. So those are some of the challenges. Now, some of the opportunity there is this is going to create millions of jobs in supply chain, and as the demand goes up, salaries will probably go up. Finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Congress for helping with entrepreneurial wherewithal and building entrepreneurial capacity. I'm in a pretty rural part of the U.S. in Arkansas, and we have a really good budding venture scene happening, and some of that is attributable to things like the SBA Regional Innovation Cluster funding, the Department of Commerce EDA I-6 funding, and those are great for helping train future entrepreneurs and help the region plan. So I'm looking forward to answering any questions you may have, and again, humbly appreciate the opportunity and the attention and consideration today. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your testimony, and Mr. Borsch, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Chairman Lotter, Ranking Member Schakowsky, and members of the committee, thank you for the invitation to testify today on the impact of e-commerce and online retailers on Main Street small business. My name is David Boris, and I serve on the Executive Committee of the Main Street Alliance, a national network that creates opportunities for small business owners to speak for ourselves on matters of public policy that impact our businesses, our employees, and the communities we serve. The rapid emergence of technologies disrupting and remaking vast sectors of our economy unleashes incredible innovations, but also pose dramatic challenges in the retail sector. Online retailers are ever more able to deliver goods and services to satisfy ever-increasing consumer demand. But with the incredible growth of e-commerce companies like Amazon.com, there's an existential threat to the millions of small business owners who form the backbone of the American economy, creating jobs and ensuring that local wealth stays circulating in local economies. Ensuring that America's small businesses remain competitive in this brave new world of e-commerce should be a core concern of policymakers, and significant attention should be paid to the development of laws and regulations that ensure fairness and prevent unhealthy market concentration. Today, I'll discuss 3 key policy issues that we feel are essential in ensuring such a fair and competitive marketplace for small business: internet tax fairness, net neutrality, and affordable, high-quality broadband access. Small business owners need policies that level the playing field and ensure necessary revenue for local and state investments. When e-commerce laws allow for big internet retailers to avoid their tax responsibility, small businesses suffer, and our states miss out on revenue needed for adequate funding of education, infrastructure, and public safety. Since the 1992 Supreme Court decision ruling in Quill Corporation versus North Dakota, Congress has been unable to create a proper legislative environment to enable states to protect bricks and mortar businesses that are the heart and soul of our local communities. By exempting online retailers from collecting sales tax, current public policy perversely incentivizes consumers to shop online, reducing local economic activity. Not only does this practice reduce Main Street's customer base, it also dramatically undermines state and local government budgets. When looking across mail, online, and catalog retail, this unfair tax gap costs an estimated $23.3 billion to state and local budgets annually. Main Street needs Congress to act to ensure this lost revenue can be collected. Net neutrality. We're concerned that the FCC's regulatory changes to net neutrality will significantly and unfairly undermine market access and competition on the internet. While only a small handful of companies sell internet access, nearly every company in the country buys it. Weakening or rolling back the 2015 protections would be disastrous for the country's small business community. Internet providers would gain new power to steer businesses and customers in whatever direction they choose. Our customers' ISPs could charge us new fees for the right to reach our customers or charge them for access to our sites and services. And they could favor our competitors by slowing down our traffic or exempting our competitors' traffic from users' data caps or simply block websites and apps outright. Small business owners would simply be unable to compete with large corporations on a pay-to-play internet. This would create immense uncertainty for small businesses in every sector of the economy who rely on open, unencumbered connectivity for their businesses and productivity. While countries around the world embrace strong common sense net neutrality protections, American small business would be left behind. Congress must maintain strong net neutrality to protect America's small business. Finally, access to affordable, high-quality broadband is necessary to boost small business owners and entrepreneurs' access to e-commerce marketplaces. This is particularly true in rural areas. A recent report by the FCC found that nearly 40% of the rural population, that's over 23 million Americans, compared to only 4% of the urban population, lack access to basic broadband service. This report notes that this disparity, quote, disproportionately impacts the ability of small businesses operating in rural areas to successfully compete. Without access to reliable broadband service, small businesses cannot develop quality online platforms and stand to lose out on both sales and relevancy as the number of online shoppers continues to grow. Internet tax fairness, net neutrality, and access to affordable quality broadband, all policies that create a level playing field for small businesses in the e-commerce marketplace. This is the recipe for small business success, a strong middle class, and vibrant local economies. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify today, and I look forward to your questions.
And thank you very much for your testimony. And Mr. Johnson, you are recognized for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Latta and Ranking Member Schakowsky and members of the committee. I appreciate the committee taking the time to learn about new technologies and what laws and regulations stand in the way of their deployment and adoption. Overstock is a technology leader in the e-commerce industry. And to this end, we incorporate two principles as business tenets. First, it's all about customer experience. And second, our customers' experience improves when decisions are made at the knowledge frontier. Because knowledge is costly to centralize, we prefer self-organizing systems and free market solutions. These can often be low-tech, old-school ways. For example, Overstock became a consistent award-winning customer service organization when we adopted the credo, the customer deserves justice, and then empowered our customer service representatives to make decisions on their own to determine what justice was for each customer. However, in an ever-expanding and advancing world where technology, innovation, and customer expectations quickly evolve, we're constantly incorporating new technology into our business model to improve our customers' experience. Much of this technology empowers the customer herself or those working directly with the customer to make decisions in a more informed way. Let me give 4 current examples. First, our mobile application. Overstock's current award-winning mobile application incorporates the latest technology to increase its speed. We've learned that with every 100 milliseconds of average page load time decreases the conversion rate by 1%. In other words, customers are less likely to buy something on our site when it takes longer to load a page. We've also launched an augmented reality tool on our iOS mobile app. This tool lets customers use their phones to accurately visualize our products, like a sofa, in the room where they're going to use it, like their living room. They can see the size, the dimensions, and the colors, and how they fit in their room. This allows our customers to make more informed decisions. Importantly, this AR tool was an idea of one of our IT developers born out of his own desire to improve his shopping experience on our site. It was not conceived or directed by senior management at the company. Second, personalization technology. Both our website and our digital ads are highly personalized for each customer based on their past searching, browsing, and shopping experience. For example, if 2 customers come to our site and search for a red couch, they will receive different content based on their past experience on the site. This technology understands customers' style preferences and incorporates these preferences into search results and served pages. It uses customer feedback loops to increase personalization and in turn has increased our shopping conversion rate. Importantly, this technology was developed during a developer hackathon where we allow our developers to work on whatever projects they think will be best for the company. Again, it was not conceived or directed by senior management. Overstock is an e-commerce industry leader in shipping large furniture items without damage. That's a difficult thing to do. We do this by using state-of-the-art technology in manufacturing, packaging, and shipping. These technologies include designing products that are less prone to be damaged in shipping, using packing optimization, such as use of tailored boxings, and breaking less than load large items into multiple packages, which can be shipped more easily. And then, of course, we use geographical warehousing to keep the product as close to the customer as possible. Again, many of these improvements were suggested by sourcing and warehousing employees most familiar with the problems of shipping. In January 2014, Overstock became the first major retailer to accept Bitcoin as a payment mechanism. We now accept nearly 50 different cryptocurrencies. This calendar year, our weekly volume of cryptocurrency revenue has ranged between about $100,000 and $250,000 a week. While this is a minuscule percentage of our weekly revenue, it is a growing percentage. And so Overstock has created a wholly owned subsidiary called Medici Ventures with the aim of advancing blockchain technology. We think blockchain technology will be used for 3 significant things. First, democratizing capital to allow everyone, including the poorest members of our society, to participate in the local, national, and global markets. Second, blockchain technology can eliminate middlemen, which add unnecessary time, difficulty, and cost to transactions. And third, we think blockchain technology will rehumanize commerce so that you and I can conduct business together without middlemen in between. Our digital handshake becomes the physical handshake of years past. Again, thank you for this opportunity to testify in front of the subcommittee. I look forward to answering your questions.
Well, thank you very much for your testimony and to all our witnesses for your testimony. And we'll now move into the question and answer portion of the hearing. And I will begin by recognizing myself for 5 minutes. Mr. Schenker, if I could start with you, how important will improving the supply chain be to e-commerce and retailers' growth? And what kinds of supply chain strategies does CaseStack provide to its clients?
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of changes that are required. Really, I think the most significant thing is as we move to long-tail distribution, if you take a look sort of historically at retail, there was a group of people at a retailer who would sort of protect the shelf, and they would protect the whole supply chain behind the shelf. So you got a bricks and mortar store layout with limited shelf space. Then if you were a buyer at a big retailer, you would buy the best-selling items. You'd try to curate what was in the box. That would then protect what was behind it, which was usually a distribution center network. There was a lot of technology that was built around best-selling items as opposed to lots of items, which is what we have now. So everything up the whole supply chain is sort of changing, and we're trying to work with that to make that economical and feasible so that one of the major things I mentioned that we do is consolidation. So it takes a lot of collaboration and a lot of technology to figure out how can you consolidate the stuff that's going out to a retailer and eventually all those packages that are sitting at all of our front doors. If you think about, I'll sometimes come home to my house and I'll be gone for a couple of days, and I have what is really about a quarter of a pallet of products, but they didn't come in on a pallet. What they did is they came in onesie-twosies, a box and a box and a box at a time. It's really expensive. It's not an environmentally sustainable thing to do, and a lot of people really aren't making any money on that. So what we see as a change, and one of the things that we're working on that is in that area is take the consolidation that we've done for retail and do the same thing for consumers. So instead of that coming in as a box and lots of little boxes, bring in something that would be a larger delivery, something like a pallet or a quarter of a pallet. It might not look exactly the same as it does now. And then you wouldn't need as much of the plastic and paper dunnage and all the packaging, and you get one delivery, maybe one delivery every couple of days or once a week, as opposed to one at a time. And that will make, e-commerce companies will actually be able to make money on that. And then it's just better for the consumer. Doesn't have a pile of boxes to deal with. I'm sure people are familiar with the trash that they have to take out, which is really it's not convenient at all to have to open up all the boxes, dig through it all, and then figure out what to do with, these piles of trash. So we're trying to, our biggest objective really is ways to collaborate with retailers, with e-commerce retailers, anybody to consolidate.
Well, thank you very much. Mr. Taylor, how do you leverage data to help clients improve their cost structure and improve efficiency?
Well, at our core, we are a data ingestion transformation company. And so one of the challenges that our retail customers face today is a lack of visibility into those in-transit, out-for-delivery shipments to customers. And the reason they don't have visibility is because they don't have the data. Their carrier networks are more complex. Each of those carriers produces data differently. And so through our technology, we ingest all of the data from their carriers. We transform it, we put a predictive layer in it, and that enables us to identify exception cases or distressed shipments very early in the process, which then allows our customer, the retailer, to be proactive instead of, in today's world, being reactive to customer complaints.
Now, do you use algorithms to help in that?
We do. Yes, we absolutely do. A very good example of this would be And we get data from various places. So carriers provide us data on behalf of our customers. We take feedback from consumers. And then we as a company, through these algorithms, create our own exception or distressed states on shipments. Just an easy example would be, given all the data that is flowing through our platform, we know that a carrier terminal in North Dakota, products should be moving through that facility in 6 hours, and we notice a shipment through the machine intelligence that has not moved in 18 hours. And so we will actually create an exception case out of that shipment, even if the carrier hasn't told us there's an issue. And that enables then our retail customer operations team to work with the carrier to understand what's happened with that shipment.
Thank you very much, and my time's just about to expire, so I yield back the balance, and I recognize the gentlelady from Illinois, the ranking member of the subcommittee, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. You know, while I have most of my questions for Mr. Boris, Mr. Sanker, I wanted to I was just fascinated. Yes, I have the boxes all over, but we have big recycle bins. But it does seem to me that the environmental concerns are really big, and I'd love, after this hearing, maybe my office could be in touch with you about that. I think it's a really important question, including the gas that's used. So thank you. Mr. Boers, I really appreciate your being here. We've worked together a lot on issues that deal with small businesses, and that voice is so important at this table right now, I think. And I wanted, you noted how the inequities in state sales tax laws favor internet retailers with no in-state presence at all. And Congress has looked at legislation to create a level playing field for tax collection, but unfortunately those efforts have stalled. If all retailers, mainstream and online, had to collect sales taxes in the state where the consumer buys the product, that would generate revenue for, as you pointed out, for state and local government as well. It's not just a problem for the retailers. How would that revenue and a fairer playing field help Main Street businesses?
Well, sure. So in Northbrook, where I conduct my business, we have a 9.75% sales tax that we have to collect. So right from the beginning, you've got to discount your product by almost 10%. The business that I happen to be in, and I don't really compete necessarily in that space because we tend to produce more full-service events, which is a more difficult thing for a online business to try to recreate what we do in my business. But if I'm in a different business and if members of my network are in those businesses, many small businesses are operating on trying to drop 8%, 9%, 11% to the bottom line. When you strip away that amount of money, they're suddenly not in business any longer. So it's...
Opponents of marketplace fairness have argued that small businesses would struggle to collect the correct sales tax for each state. Do you share that concern?
So even in my small business, we operate our core business in Northbrook, Illinois, but we operated a satellite business in Rosemont, Illinois, and a satellite business in Glencoe, Illinois, and a satellite business in Lake Bluff, and a satellite little business. These were all seasonal type businesses or small cafes. So yeah, when we fill out, 5 sales tax return sheets as part of our Illinois sales tax return, yeah, it's a little bit of pain in the ass, right? But what we're talking about is on a monthly basis, for me to do that, it took maybe 45 minutes instead of 15 minutes to do 5 instead of 1. I think that's just the cost of doing business. And when we look at that and say, well, if I'm going to go into an online retail business, I need to understand that that's what's going to happen. The other thing I would say is that the software solutions, the day that every online retailer has to pay sales tax in every municipality that they do business in, the day after that, there will be a boatload of solutions available by good software developers that say, whoa, there's a market here. So we'll pay a little bit to obtain those software solutions. We'll turn them over to our administrative staff, and they'll incorporate them in the same way as we incorporate all new technologies into our businesses.
I wonder if you also talked about net neutrality, and I have never received more communications from constituents on any issue as net neutrality. It's incredible. Probably every millennial, particularly in my district, including my grandson who called to lobby me, has definitely been involved. So if you could elaborate on the extent to which day-to-day operations depend on fast, affordable internet service and what it would mean to small businesses not to have net neutrality.
So I think the conversation on net neutrality, when we say, well, you know, certain businesses flourished 10 years ago when they were born, or 13 or 14 years ago when they were born, and we didn't have, you know, the net neutrality regulations in place. But the internet was not the presence in our lives 10 years ago, 15 years ago, as it is today. You can't function any longer, right? You can barely function as an individual. You certainly can't function as a business in anywhere approaching an urban environment without working with the internet on a daily basis, both to look for vendors and where you're going to source your supplies, as well as finding your clientele and interfacing with your clientele. I think that the reason you see surveys that say that somewhere near 70 or 73% of Americans are in favor of net neutrality rules is because we intuitively understand, and I think small businesses do as well, we intuitively are concerned about concentrations of power in the marketplace. And to believe that something is fundamental to my business and to our network of small businesses and everybody's business, something as fundamental as access to the same speeds and the same data and the same ability to utilize the internet, to believe that a concentration in market power could subvert and change that ability is a frightening prospect. And once we get there, it's going to be way, way harder to go, oh, we made a mistake, now we have to undo it, because the market will have already spoken. It's a frightening
I want to just say this. Mr. Johnson testified slowing the load time for a web page by just 100 milliseconds can cut into sales. So it is significant. Thank you. I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. Yield back.
Yep. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, the vice chairman of the subcommittee, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for yielding. Mr. Boris, I appreciate your passion. I agree with you. Concentrations of power are exactly what folks my age and younger are concerned about, which is why we're getting this out of the federal government's control in changing the rules from what the last administration did. I also would welcome you. I notice you have a lot of restaurants and places around Illinois. Come out to real Illinois sometime in the flat part, the not suburbs. We'll welcome you at any time. So would love to have you there. But thanks for being here. Mr. Johnson, you note in your testimony that Overstock was the first major retailer to accept Bitcoin and now accepts over 50 different cryptocurrencies. I know there's a lot of people that try to kind of be new day and say, hey, the cryptocurrency thing's cool and everything. I have a lot of concerns about it, and I've actually kind of evolved my thinking on this in the last even year. Let me ask you a question. What are some of the benefits that cryptocurrencies can provide, and what are some of the risks and challenges? I'm more concerned about the risks and challenges, but if you could give me both, that'd be great.
Sure. So Overstock decided to start accepting cryptocurrency because we're in the business of making it easier for our customers to transact with us. And whether that means accepting credit card or PayPal and Apple Pay or cryptocurrencies, we'd like our customers to be able to purchase with us. One of the benefits to us is it has significantly cut our fraud prevention department down. People often say that cryptocurrencies are a tool of fraud and used by criminals worldwide. I will tell you this, so are credit cards. And Overstock employs somewhere between, depending on the time of year, 30 and 40 people in our fraud prevention department to fight credit card fraud. With cryptocurrencies, it is like a cash transaction. It is a final sale for us, and we have almost no interchange fee and no risk of fraud. So part of the benefits are we are reducing internal costs that we can then pass on to our customers.
And let me ask you then, if you for instance, Bitcoin, with the massive fluctuation in value, how does that affect your bottom line?
So when we first started accepting Bitcoin, we converted all of it into US dollars immediately. Over time, we've begun keeping...
And what do you do that through?
Through our integration with Coinbase, so if you came and purchased a sheet set on our site with Bitcoin, it would immediately be converted into dollars because we're paying our bills in dollars. Today we have vendors and others who take payment in cryptocurrencies, so we keep up to half of our cryptocurrency revenue in Bitcoin. Most of it still goes to dollars. We keep the other half, up to half, in Bitcoin, and we let our Treasury Department manage that, selling and not. So we don't hold much risk in that sense.
So obviously you're exposed to fluctuations, but maybe not. I mean, you're also exposed to fluctuations in the value of a dollar or whatever.
Sure, and we're exposed to fluctuation in gas prices and the cost of shipping, all kinds of things.
And also in your testimony, you emphasize that care must be taken for consumers' safety and privacy, especially as retailers continue to deploy internet-connected applications to enhance customer experiences. We know that with an increasing number of IoT devices, cybersecurity is of the utmost importance. What do you think retailers must do to protect consumer information, and what approaches to cybersecurity are you seeing? Actually, this is for Mr. Taylor, I'm sorry. What approaches to cybersecurity are you seeing retailers apply? If you need me to repeat, I will, because you probably were zoned out when I was asking Mr. Johnson.
I got the gist of it.
Okay.
Yeah, so there are a number of issues around, data security, consumer privacy, and safety. I mean, I'll touch on a few of these. So, with the consumer's desire for ever more convenience, ever more control in their deliveries, this is resulting in innovations like Amazon Key and Ring, where now delivery drivers are going to be able to enter consumer homes even potentially without them being present. So clearly, there are considerations for consumer privacy and safety in a world like that. On the data side, some of the, one of the things we see, at least in our business, again, our business is last mile, visibility and distress shipment management. But one of the things we see, we're a good example of this. We're a technology company. We now sit in between the retailer and the consumer and the carrier in terms of the data that's being produced. So there are more companies like us. There are more carriers that retailers are working with that produce more data. So with more nodes of data production and data use, that just inherently creates some risk as well.
Excellent.
And so how we manage this, we don't require personally identifiable information from consumers to provide our products and services, but our products are certainly enhanced if we can have basic PII, such as a delivery address, email, and phone number.
Okay.
And we hold ourselves to high standards around that.
Thank you. I yield back. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Kentucky for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. It's an interesting hearing. I founded the Congressional E-Commerce Caucus in Louisville, Kentucky a few years ago, probably a generation ago now, was the winner of the Worldport location for UPS. So most UPS planes that fly in and out fly out of our Louisville. It's a great place to locate. Not much snow, center of the country, or this part of the country, so other people looking forward. But what I guess we didn't see happening with the internet moving forward, and when that happened is what's happened. I don't have Louisville, but my district just south of there, Shepherdsville, Brooks, Hillview. If you drive through there now, you see Zappos, Best Buy, BestBuy.com, Amazon.com, Geek Squad. I mean, all those are there because of the access to Worldport. And so it's something I've been very interested in because it's a big driver of economics in my district, and a big driver for trade, quite honestly, because they ship stuff all over the world from there. And so we're looking at these centers, like are in my district. The centers, there's warehouses, sorting hubs. How do they contribute to the last mile of delivery? This is to Mr. Sanker, Mr. Taylor. With the drive for 2-day, next day, and even same-day delivery, have you seen an increase in the need for more fulfillment centers? You two can take it.
One of the things we certainly observe with our retail customers, again, driven by consumer demand for convenience and immediacy, is certainly more assortment and inventory is moving closer to where demand is. And so this is really being done in two ways. One is additional capacity fulfillment centers are being built. And the other is for our omni-channel retailers that have physical presence with stores. Many of these stores, in a world where retail is constricting, many of these stores are at least being partially used for warehousing. And so they're sort of partial store operations and then e-commerce fulfillment center all in one facility.
Yeah, similarly, I think we see a little bit of everything, which I think is the market at work, really. We see, fulfillment from stores, fulfillment from new distribution centers. There's no doubt there will be a lot more new distribution centers, and I think there's no doubt that the current retail square footage that's out there is going to have to shrink, and the current square footage of warehousing and distribution center capacity is going to increase. And then you do have some of what you mentioned, which is this clustering effect, which is great for the areas that can do it. And one of the key issues that we're going to have is a workforce that's capable and trained and can handle all this growth. And
that leads into my next question. I was going to ask you as we move. So just as you're going down that path, the biggest concern you have when you go through these, they're incredibly high tech. I mean, unbelievably high tech. Of course, you need sorters, just people that are there helping with the boxes moving forward, but they really need people who have industrial maintenance, computers skills, and what are you trying to do to retain talent? We're just like that talent, at least in our area, but I think in the whole country, you hear that from everywhere you go in the country.
yeah, I mean, we have this issue. Next week I go back and we're having what we're calling the Nowhere Developer Conference, because we're sort of in the middle of nowhere out in Arkansas, and we're attracting technology, hardcore sort of technology developers to the area. We're also working with high school students. We've got interns, high school interns come into the office every week. We've got meetups and conferences, so everything from high school students. And I think that's probably it's a challenge. I mean, you can't just invent more people. So the two areas that we see that are great opportunities is start younger. So anything that anybody can do to support getting high school students some real life experiences. These kids that are 13 and 14 have unbelievable talent. I think we probably all see it in other areas that I don't think my generation ever had. And then we've had H-1B people that were rejected who, are master's degrees in computer science. They come to schools in the United States and we pay to train them. And then, we've got one's in China now and one's in Canada, helping to create jobs for Chinese people and Canadians and helping build venture capital there and new companies. Things like that, I think, are huge. But mostly, it's start with high school students, train them, give them real experiences. They're eager. So that's been great.
Well, thanks. And I did have a couple more questions. I'm about out of time, but I was going to talk to Mr. Johnson, so you'll have time to answer. But, and so we're trying to figure out, I know what Mr. Boris always talk about, those teams. We need to be careful hearing those businesses in our communities that's names are on the back of Little League jerseys. That's what I always like to talk about, the local folks. We have to be cognizant of that. And maybe there's a way as the last stage of same-day delivery, some of these retail operations also become almost warehousing opportunities where you buy online and goes to a local store and comes to your business. Or you go to I like to buy books online, but I go to the local store because I want the local store to still be there. So I go there to make the purchase because I don't want it all to become online in the local bookstore with the coffee shop and everything goes away. And so that's something we need to be cognizant of, but I'm out of time, so I appreciate the opportunity to be here and you guys here today.
Thank you very much. The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from West Virginia for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry I missed some of the early comments. We got a hearing going on upstairs, so it's been back and forth on this. But if I could, just to kind of focus in on perhaps on the postal delivery with the U.S. Postal Service. We've had enough testimony in other meetings, other hearings about some of the deficiencies in our post office in handling their products and security and the like. Are there some suggestions that you would make on how we might be able to improve our postal service to handle what potentially could be, as this e-commerce continues to pick up, what we should be proactively moving on? Any of the four of you? So everyone's satisfied the post office is running fine. Thank you. Go ahead. You look like you want to jump in on it.
I'll say something. I think the post office served a wonderful purpose before we had private companies like UPS and FedEx delivering to any small and rural town. We use the Postal Service for about 2% of our deliveries, mostly small items, very small items. But UPS and everyone else gets anywhere and everywhere for less. And so, you know, I think trying to run it more like a private business than a government bureaucracy would make sense.
I was just curious because of the last mile delivery. Often they will hire the post office to make that delivery, so I'm aware of that. But let me go to another, because I'm fascinated with this, how it's changed. I can remember back when I was in college back in the 60s when our first computers came out, to think how we've evolved in the last 50 plus years with this. But I'm curious with deliveries going to homes. I'm still looking, because when we go to a go to an airport, they always ask one of the first things, your chain of custody. Did you have possession of your item the entire time? But yet now we're leaving products, could be 1 day or 2 days, sitting on a porch they have custody. How do you deal with that? And what are some of the issues that perhaps get into it in terms of people having access, or you're telegraphing to the bad actors, there's no one home? What's the process? What's your liability as a shipper or someone that is shipping products? How do you come into that? Anyone?
I guess I could address some of that. Yeah, you definitely have packages that are just left on doorsteps now, and there is a growing bad actor group that has sort of figured that out and is stealing those packages, I think. But I think that the market is also addressing that. The lockers that you see popping up, there's, you know, like Amazon's got lockers in Whole Foods. There's whole locker companies that are just sell lockers to apartment complexes and things like that. I think that goes a long way to addressing it. So you use your phone to unlock your package, and that's pretty convenient for people.
I don't know too many lockers in rural West Virginia. That's where.
And I think it's a pretty new concept, really. I think I live in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and we've got lockers in the apartment building across the street from my office. We've got them in the Whole Foods.
The last question I want to get towards it is, I've had the experience in a highly secure area to classified was to hear about the dark web and all the e-commerce is occurring over that. What suggestions would you make on e-commerce on the dark web?
First, I'd just comment, one of the things we do on that package delivery issue is we sell a lot of larger goods, couches and pieces of furniture. We allow our customers to arrange for a delivery time, and I think that helps stop that. The thing I would say, the dark web is a problem, and I think a lot of cryptocurrency purchases on the dark web are often said to be a problem. But as I have talked to law enforcement officials, they have said one of the things they like about cryptocurrency on the dark web is it leaves an electronic footprint. It's not an anonymous transaction, it's a pseudonymous transaction, and they are able to track those purchases, and if they're legal purchases, see who ultimately did them. And I noticed the other day that the U.S. Marshal was selling a lot of Bitcoin. It's not because they had bought Bitcoin or had been mining Bitcoin, but it's because they had seized it through illegal transactions, most likely on the dark web. So I think that something that leaves that electronic footprint is actually helpful in solving problems that may arise out of the dark web.
Just in closing, I just hope we can keep up with the speed of the transformational economy right now on how and be able to keep the control. So I hope you're right on that, and we can, because it's very concerning when we think 90% of the web, the internet, is not what we use. It's not have easy access. It's a dark web. So I'm hoping we can be careful with that. Thank you. I appreciate you. Yield back my time.
Thank you very much. The gentleman yields back, and the chair now recognizes the gentleman from Indiana for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Johnson, how do you see the impact of e-commerce affecting rural parts of the country? I represent a broadly rural district, and I mean, no one wants to be left out of the consumer revolution. So that and what kind of technology and innovation changed the way industry is changing the way industry is thinking about servicing rural areas of our country?
Great question. As I've traveled around rural Utah in particular quite a bit, I've been asked that same question. I think one of the things that e-commerce does that can help rural America is it gives them access to a customer base outside of their city or county lines. We have lots of suppliers that drop ship from their homes and warehouses in rural parts of America that list product on Overstock, are able to access all of our marketing, our backbone of processing their credit card, et cetera. So I actually think that e-commerce helps rural America because it allows people that are manufacturing or have a good idea, a good product, greater access to all 300 plus million people in the United States.
And I think that I agree with that, and I think that brings up someone mentioned broadband access, and so I just want to point out again that some areas in my congressional district can't get, they have dial-up almost still, for their internet access. They do, and so it does bring up the importance where they're going to have access of getting rural broadband. I want to just ask a question about the healthcare space. I was a surgeon before, and I guess I'll start that in. I mean, where do you see this type of industry going as it relates to the healthcare space? Because we have a cost problem in the healthcare space. It costs too much. And are there innovations out there that can help us overall bring down the cost of what it's costing us to provide healthcare services to our citizens? Mr. Taylor?
Well, I would weigh in on that and just say that when we look at the cost of health care and when we look at where those costs are, certainly in end-of-life care, right, which is a whole different conversation culturally, I think, but there's also the single most preventable a driver in healthcare, and it's adult-onset diabetes and obesity. And when we look at that, I think that, and this might be anathema to some of you guys, but I think that this government has a role to play in understanding what our food chain looks like and how we use tax policy to incentivize that,
fair
right?
enough.
And I think there's a spot there.
Okay. Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, so again, our role to convey really is around trying to find efficiencies in last mile transportation. And while our core market is retail, we are beginning to do some exploration in last mile, business to business deliveries for healthcare. So this is, distribution to pharmacies, distribution to hospitals. In some sense, there are some similarities to retail where this last mile transportation involves different modes of transportation. It's not just small package delivery, but there are large item deliveries to hospitals. There are medical devices to hospitals where predictability of those deliveries is very, very important. So I think, if we can give better visibility into those deliveries and make them more predictable, that will result in efficiencies and cost savings.
Right, because historically, I'll just give an example, like a hip prosthesis or something. It used to be hospitals would have inventories of those, right? And now it's kind of gravitated to where the device company itself, will come that day when you have a procedure and bring their inventory and you use the one that you want. That's kind of that's the way it's done. It seems kind of cumbersome to me, but there may be opportunities there to further decrease cost by if you can get things delivered accurately and efficiently in the healthcare space. Anybody else? You have any?
I think you can cut all kinds of costs out of it by having things centrally warehoused and shipped. I'm good friends with a fellow who runs a company called PillPack, which sends out prescriptions to people every month in daily packages, so they're going to be more likely to take their medication and stay healthy than if they have to go to the pharmacy when the bottle runs out.
Yep.
Yeah, similar to that, we have a company in town that's working on more home diagnostic kits so that people can sort of figure out their own issues without having to actually go to the doctor, which I think is also stems from some of this. It just, I think if anything, it's going to help give people access that wouldn't have otherwise had access and make it easier to take, your meds and manage that, and also diagnostics.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an IT person, but I think there's a lot of opportunity in the healthcare space for the use of technology to improve efficiencies and get our costs down. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you very much. The gentleman yields back. The chair will now recognize the gentleman from Florida for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. Thank you for your testimony today as well. Mr. Johnson, retailers are no longer competing just on products, as you know, but instead for people's time. In particular, you mentioned in your testimony new innovations like the Overstock mobile app, cryptocurrency, personalized recommendations that can help shoppers save time by providing an array of tools and options. How has this changed the way companies operate?
Well, we've been in business for 18 years as an e-commerce company. If you went back and looked at our original site 18 years ago, it feels almost caveman-like compared to today. We are always trying to make the customer experience better, easier for them to interface in, and to make it more pleasing. We now put up, for example, videos so that they can see all around the product. We have better sizing and color. Sometimes your computer screen has a little bit different color than the actual thing. We do all this to make the customer experience better and to reduce the potential of returns to us. So I think technology lets us find ways to make it easier for the customer to access what he or she wants.
Yeah. And again, you have a lot of competition, so you have to keep up with the times, correct?
The competition is fierce. And, frankly, we've gone from a place where it was brick and mortar or e-commerce, and most companies today are more like a brick and click. You can buy something online and pick it up at the local store or return it to the local store. The competition is fierce, and I think that means the customer is ultimately the winner because businesses are competing hard for the customer's time and money.
What's the percentage of revenue on e-commerce as opposed to the brick and mortar store?
Is certainly going up over time, and I think that's because customers find convenience in it. It's the convenience factor. It's not whether they have to pay sales tax or not. Every customer who buys online has to pay sales or use tax. It's a convenience factor. And I know when wedding invitations come into my house, my wife always shops online because they can ship it. She doesn't have to do all the extra work. People like e-commerce because it's easier.
But she doesn't mind not having to try something on, and maybe getting it online as opposed. And I guess she would send it back if
But I think companies have gotten so much better at helping us size. I bought a pair of shoes the other day online, and it was very specific in its sizing on this company, saying if your foot is wide, buy a size extra. When they showed up, and I bought a size that's not my natural size, kind of following what was on the website. When they showed up, they fit perfectly.
Yeah. I hate trying things on anyway.
There you go.
I just gamble.
You and me both.
I take a risk. All right, Mr. Taylor, I'm always concerned about the welfare of my senior citizen constituents from the great state of Florida. Are there new last mile and independent contractor services that will help the elderly and disabled live more independently?
This is a really interesting issue. I mean, we don't directly deal with this specific question in our business, but I do think that the consumer demand around convenience, the ability to be in our homes and shop from our homes and have delivery gratification quickly, will certainly benefit those who have more difficulty getting out to a physical store. But as I mentioned in my testimony, I think care must be taken around a world where delivery drivers are more and more coming into our homes. We are ordering more and more large item deliveries today than ever: couches, other furniture, patio furniture, appliances. We no longer have to see and touch these items, and so all of those items require delivery appointments and strangers to come into our home. So I think it's an interesting issue that this subcommittee may wish to address.
Very good. Thank you. Next question. Well, I don't have time. I'll submit it for the record, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. The gentleman yields back, and the chair now recognizes the gentlelady from California for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm actually one of those women that does shop online, guess. I almost exclusively now buy my clothes online, and I love it because it's so much easier, although I think it's costing me a lot more money. I don't think my husband's too happy about that.
The more you shop, the more you save.
There you go. And I look for all of those special deals that I can get. Sure. So
Don't interrupt.
Anyway, my questions are going to be for Mr. Johnson. The consumers are increasingly utilizing voice-activated assistants to play music, check the weather, or set cooking timers. One company's voice-activated assistant product saw a 325% increase in its users from May 2014 to May 2017. Voice-activated assistants are expected to see continued growth in the coming years. One estimate predicts that a majority of U.S. homes will have one of these smart speakers by 2022. There are expected to be over 800 million of these devices worldwide in coming years. Since current technology is somewhat limited, purchases via voice-activated assistants are typically limited to small or replenishment purchases because it is difficult to compare prices or visually inspect a product. Mr. Johnson, do you have any thoughts on how voice-activated assistants could offer an improved shopping experience by leveraging personalized and behavioral data like other platforms offer, or is this platform's usefulness in e-commerce limited?
We have not looked at this a lot, so I'm not sure I'll speak really intelligently on it, but as we use voice-activated assistants in my home, it's just an easier way to do things. It's convenient, it's less typing, it's more talking. And I think it lets you access data quickly. But I'm afraid I can't give a great answer because we're not using it a lot in our business.
Okay, then I don't know. Let me ask this other one and see if you can answer that. Are there ways to benefit consumers who shop by voice-activated assistants so they receive recommendations for the best reviewed product or the product that best fits their needs, as opposed to products that pay for enhanced placement?
Sure, absolutely. And our view is we want to be serving the customer and not have suppliers buying shelf space. And so we're serving up recommendations. If, as I mentioned in my testimony, if you search for a red couch or a specific style of red couch, the other search results that come up underneath that will be based on your browsing experience or your voice-activated browsing experience so that it will fit you. Our goal is to please the customer, not to necessarily push one product over another.
Okay, thank you. That's the only questions I had, so I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The gentlelady yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania for 5 minutes.
I always thought that it was the more that you shop, the more that you spend. But I appreciate the perspective that you actually save more when you shop more. That's a good way of looking at it. And you were quick with it, too. You were so quick with it. It's very good. I have QVC, which is actually now Curate Retail Group, is a constituent company of mine, and I've been very interested to see them navigate the new digital economy as they are, modernizing their television platform and marrying it with internet sales as they have. The question I want to focus on is sort of what's around the corner, Internet of Things, IoT, and I'm just curious, and this is a question for each of the witnesses. Explain or share with me how IoT is being used to enhance your supply chain, both in terms of getting consumers their packages, in situations potentially where consumers need to return items. Sometimes Ms. Walters gets the package, she decides she doesn't want it then, and so it needs to get back to you. So share with me how technology is changing the face of the consumer experience as well as the supply chain.
I could talk a little bit about supply chain. From a transportation and warehousing perspective, there's a lot of new IoT devices that are now connected, so that as we build out our new SupplyPike platform, we're building APIs so that it's easy for all these IoT devices to connect. So things like, when you order or you buy in a store your food, it was supposed to be refrigerated. You've got IoT devices now in the trailers that can track to see if it actually was refrigerated for the whole ride or even internationally. I think things like that are all throughout the warehousing and transportation industry, and they're going to just keep on growing because they get less expensive each year.
I think one of the things that IoT can help with is knowing when the replenishment purchases need to be made. If you have the Internet of Things telling you when you're out of milk, or when at a farm you need more fertilizer or whatever, that's particularly useful and can help in the replenishment.
Well, certainly when we purchased smallwares equipment 12 years ago, we would call 4 different potential suppliers, and they would have to fax over spec sheets, and then it would come up murky and we couldn't read them, and then we would have to bang back and forth with working on price back and forth and what are the shipping costs. And now probably 80% of what we purchase for supplies are purchased from Webstaurant or any one of half a dozen other sites. The negative to that, in my community long term, is that we don't pay sales tax on that, which takes out of Northbrook and takes out of North Chicago and takes out of Waukegan or wherever the vendors were located. That's an issue. I mean, for me, it puts a little bit more money in my pocket as a business owner, but certainly nothing's going to change on that, right? I mean, the Internet of Things is here, and it's going to be used and exploited, and it works in many ways to the benefit of a company like mine.
In last mile delivery, we're sort of early days in Internet of Things,
right?
But we're excited about it. I mean, our business is connecting data from all these disparate systems, and as these physical devices get deployed in last mile retail, we'll be able to ingest, unify, and make sense out of all of this data that's going to be produced. So we think it holds great promise and are excited.
How about the issue, oftentimes it's brick and mortar versus e-commerce, but I felt the Wall Street Journal's done a pretty good job in cataloging how, sure, it can be viewed comparatively, but if you look at, there's a decline in retail jobs, but the increase in warehousing jobs, or what is traditionally termed a warehousing job, but it's much more sophisticated, requires much more tech savviness than one might expect. Just share the future of your workforce and how it may more than compensate potentially for the loss of jobs that are being displaced as a consequence.
It does seem like the new jobs will be warehousing instead of retail clerk type jobs.
More ergonomically friendly.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're also working with a company called StrongArm. What they do is ergonomic tracking, so they can actually track people in warehouses to see that they're lifting properly. And there's a lot of new technology around that. So the jobs in warehouses, I think if you go back 5 years ago, some of the retail warehouses that I used to visit, you would not want to work there. But I do think it's improving, and I think what we're going to get is a whole new crop of people who will start out in warehouse jobs, move up, salaries will increase, they'll become skilled, and then there's so many new technologies that they have to learn that it's not going to just be, lifting boxes. So I think it's a good thing for a whole new group of people to get into the supply chain management workforce.
Good points. Thank you. Yield back.
Thank you very much. The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Oklahoma for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One point I just want to follow up on the jobs to which my congressman or colleague from Pennsylvania brought up. Yeah, those jobs may be getting replaced in numbers, but they're not on Main Street. They're not in the small towns, which I'm all about business, but you can't compare apples to apples. I love the idea of creating new jobs. Every industry needs to create new jobs. That's awesome. I'm very pro-business, but we've got to be careful there that we're not comparing them, because the guys and the gals that lose their jobs on Main Street, they're not working at your warehouses because they don't live there. They're centrally located in areas that most places aren't. Going on to some questions, and Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you holding this hearing. Appreciate the witnesses for being here too. I want to talk to Mr. Johnson for just a second. I know my colleague from Illinois has brought this up a little bit about cryptocurrency. Question that I have is, are there tax consequences with this?
Yes, and I think that the IRS ruling on it has made it difficult. So today, cryptocurrencies are not treated like a currency, but they're treated more like an asset or a stock. So if I were to receive a Bitcoin today, I need to know the price when I received it, and then when I spend it or any portion of it, I need to know its value or price when I spent it. I need to know how long I held it, whether it's going to be treated as ordinary income or capital income or a loss. It makes it very difficult to transact in Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies on a daily way because it would almost be like being a day trader in stock, and most of us don't have accounting systems set up to do that.
I can see the difficulties in that. Staying on the topic of taxes, you're aware of the case with South Dakota right now?
I'm a defendant in the case.
Right. That's why I said you're aware of it.
Yes.
What do you think the reaction is going to be with the states and the local municipalities if this case gets overturned?
Well, I guess it depends how it's overturned. If it's overturned and remote sellers now owe taxes that they weren't required to collect and now have to pay out of their bottom lines, it's going to be a problem. I've long been a proponent of Congress acting and taking the invitation that the Supreme Court gave it in Quill and putting together fair legislation. I don't think that the court should be legislating, but I think the Congress should be. And I think that the ideas that Chairman Goodlatte and others have put out are good, fair solutions that work for both remote sellers and point-of-sale sellers.
Mr. Johnson, Mr. Goodlatte, his bill, he doesn't have a bill. It hasn't been marked up. There hasn't been a bill placed. But Representative Kristi Noem's bill is out there. Do you support her bill? RPTA?
So we worked very closely with Mr. Chaffetz in the previous Congress on the same bill. We do support it. We think it has some extra burdens for remote sellers that for example, Mr. Sensenbrenner's bill does not. And we're concerned that it allows the states to reach across borders and put regulations in place that aren't appropriate, but we have expressed our support for it.
It would be, I get your concerns. They're legit concerns. However, I do agree with you. RTPA is a much better solution than allowing our court system to make this decision. I believe at that point we have a potential for a lot worse consequences for retailers, because you're going to have a hodgepodge possibly of rules and regulations that you're going to have to deal with. And so we're encouraging that RTPA be brought up too. I'm helping my Congresswoman Kristi Noem on this. Appreciate your support for it too. That means a lot to us.
You're welcome.
With that, Mr. Johnson, I'm done, and Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back the remainder of my time.
Thank you very much. The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from South Carolina for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize with multiple committees going on, but we're dealing with electric vehicles upstairs, AI, and now we're dealing with cryptocurrency and digital commerce, and I think it's pretty fascinating. I don't know how many members of Congress actually own cryptocurrency in some form, but I do. And the reason I do is because I wanted to educate myself on how to purchase it, the different exchanges. I look at it every day just like I look at a stock portfolio, just to try to understand these type topics that we deal with here in this committee and are talking about today. So, Mr. Taylor, what specific consumer preferences or trends do you see being the driving force behind a lot of the retail innovations?
Well, certainly the consumer's appetite for convenience, for fast and free, are driving many of the innovations we see in the last mile. And I think that the Amazon effect is very real here, and we're helping many other retailers be able to provide similar or even better level of service. And so the innovations we see and that we're directly involved in is helping our retail customers gain much deeper visibility and the ability in last mile delivery and the ability to be truly proactive in helping the distressed shipments get back on track and then communicate with the customer in a proactive way as well.
Right. I guess this is for the panel. Because of the demand for speedy delivery, and look, my wife and I use Amazon a lot for even household goods. I mean, just because of the convenience of it. But do you see more trucks taking less than full trailers, and how is that affecting the trucking industry? That's for the panel.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier, we spend most of our time trying to figure out how to consolidate again, because things have become deconsolidated as we've all ordered less than like some really tiny packages going all over the place and coming from all over the place. So I think consolidation is the answer, and I think that what a lot of this, some of the subcommittees you just mentioned, I think it all kind of gets back to math, really. It's not our favorite subject for most of us, but all this stuff is going to be solved with algorithms, and we don't really have the people. It's all comes down to the people that can do the math. So it's like the consolidation example is a great one. We use some pretty sophisticated algorithms that I couldn't possibly understand, but we've got some great developers that do. And I think that's the key to a lot of everything now.
Right. Yeah, I visited some fulfillment centers like Walgreens where the stores are actually sending an order, or it's done automatically, I guess, that they need, 3 or 4 bottles of aspirin and 10 bottles of formaldehyde or whatever, hydrogen peroxide. And they don't have warehouses in the back of the stores anymore. It's all just-in-time fulfillment. But the box may only have 4 items in it that's going to that store. And so it's just, that's going to take up a lot of truck space for a box that only has 3 or 4 items. I can think only how that transcends or translates to individual consumers that are purchasing one item, and that truck's got to go to Eureka, Montana, right? That delivery truck. So let me move on in a little bit of time I've got left. Mr. Sanker, CaseStack is considered a third-party logistics company, or a 3PL. What are the primary functions of 3PLs within that supply chain, and why do companies hire 3PLs to handle parts or even all of their logistics?
Yeah, I think the bar has gone up a lot on all of this stuff, so it's not something that anyone can do anymore, so you need expertise. So third parties that provide logistics services are becoming increasingly relevant and having to invest quite a bit in technology. So I think the divide that's happening is you've got low tech and you've got high tech warehousing and logistics. At some point, the higher technology-based logistics operations are the ones that will be surviving, and the lower tech ones won't, because there's just a demand for instant visibility, immediate shipping, and the things that you've mentioned, like the consolidation of packaging so that it's efficient. And when I say sustainability, there's an environmental impact to a lot of these things that's pretty serious. And then from a business standpoint, like I mentioned, the $3 or so box of cereal I ordered, there's less than $1 of profit in that for businesses too. So clearly nobody could possibly make money if they spent, in order to get me a $3 box of cereal, they used a gallon of diesel fuel, 2 pounds of paper and cardboard, and 6 feet of tape, plastic tape. I mean, you can imagine that costs more than $1. So at some point, the market figures this out. I think some of the retailers are a little bit ahead of the consumers. Some of the surveys I've seen for consumers is they're all right waiting a little while for some of the deliveries, but right now the businesses haven't really given them the incentives to do it. It's free shipping. I mean, a lot of times I imagine everybody in here has the same experience. I ordered something on a Friday, this Friday. I got it on Sunday. I didn't really need it for a week, but it's there, and I didn't need all that. So that's going to change. I think the market will adjust for that.
Definitely a paradigm shift going on all across the globe. I mean, not only in the U.S. with your companies and Amazon and other fulfillment companies like that, but you're seeing Alibaba and JD and some others in the Asian markets. We have a logistics system in this country with good roads, good trains, and good airports. But I'm just curious and really watching what's going on overseas with companies like Alibaba and JD and how they are getting those items to their customers in much rural areas than we have in this country. It's a great hearing, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the time.
Well, thank you very much. The gentleman yields back. In seeing that we have no other members to ask questions, I want to thank our panel for being with us today. It has been very, very informational. We really appreciate it. And before we conclude, I would like to include the following documents to be submitted for the record by unanimous consent. A letter from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Technology Engagement Center and a letter from RILA. And without objection, so ordered. And pursuant to committee rules, I remind members that they have 10 business days to submit additional questions for the record. I ask that witnesses submit their response within 10 business days upon receipt of the questions. Without objection, the subcommittee will stand adjourned. And again, thank you very much for being with us today.